devours your mutant swamp fly. Oh yeah, I bet you didn't see that one coming. Hey, what are you doing?
Check and mate.
What? That's cheating!
On the contrary, the rules clearly state that the Blargian snagglebeast has an allergic reaction to swamp flies that lasts 2 turns. Ooh, it is on again.
Welcome back to another episode of Occult in the Ordinary, where we examine elements of horror and other spooky stuff present in non-horror games. In today's episode, we're talking about Ratchet and Clank. Owned by Chairman Drek, this facility is used to test weapons and gadgets for Blarg soldiers. Upon arrival, the isolated and eerie atmosphere is immediately apparent. The infobot showcasing BTS revealed many researchers working on this site, however, none of them can be found. The only people you're going to find here are the very few Blarg soldiers stationed around. Aside from them, alien creatures are running wild in the facility. As you make your way through the halls, dozens of small alien creatures will burst out from the vents and attack. Some of these alien swarmers will even hide inside of crates, ready to pounce once you get close. Deeper into the research station, we'll find these test tubes containing bizarre creatures. The infobot for BTS reveals that these are mutants being developed by genetic researchers. By destroying the power cells near the tubes, the alien snappers will be sent free and begin attacking. They aren't the most powerful foes, but they are pretty damn unsettling. They look like a nightmarish fusion between Littlefoot and a crab. It's also unnerving how quickly they scuttle towards you and chomp at a blinding speed. They also let out these sharp cries as they approach or when you attack them. It's a stark contrast from the goofy grunts the Blarg soldiers let out, or the silly little squishy noises that the smaller aliens produce. Further into the research station, you'll find even more snappers. Someone neglected to keep their cages closed, so now they run freely throughout the facility. This would explain the severe lack of researchers at BTS. We even see one of them get eaten alive on the infobot. This also explains why the only people we find here are Blarg soldiers, the only people capable of defending themselves against the aliens. Past this area, we reach a sickly green room. The walls and ceilings are covered in these strange bright growths. They almost look like eggs. From the ceiling drops the Alien Queen, a giant, stronger version of the snappers we faced before. The Alien Queen looks almost identical to the snappers, the only major difference being their giant head crest. It reminds me a lot of the Queen Xenomorphs from the Alien series, as they too are immediately identifiable thanks to their giant head crests. And their size, of course. Throughout the battle, the Alien Queen will summon the alien swarmers and snappers. Since they obey her command, I'm led to believe that they're all genetically related. Maybe the swarmers are juveniles and the snappers are full-grown adults. It might sound crazy, but some of the swarmers bear a color palette that is more similar to the snappers. I think of it as their Pokemon middle stage evolution, before growing into snappers. The fight is very simple. You're essentially just fighting a giant snapper, but I really enjoy it because it helps reinforce this narrative that the BTS has been warped into a nest for the aliens. You're here for the gadgets and information, but you also play a role in resolving the infestation. I also just love this overall vibe that the level has. It's so playfully spooky and fun. I feel like it's perfect for the game's tone. Oh, and you do find one researcher after this boss, so hey, at least we saved somebody. Another creepy aspect of the BTS is the shuttle that will take you to an old decommissioned Blarg warship. Just like the BTS, the warship is overrun with aliens and a few Blarg soldiers that are standing guard. I also found the track that plays here to be especially eerie. To get the infobot stowed away on the ship, you need to initiate the warship's self-destruct sequence. Once you press the big red shiny button, you're given 45 seconds to make your escape. It's a pretty generous time frame, but on your way out, more aliens appear to hinder you. Again, escaping is very easy to do, but anytime I got unlucky and got attacked, it made my anxiety skyrocket. My least favorite part of any Resident Evil game was the timed escape segment near the end of most games. When I was younger, I was deathly afraid of timers. They were always a surefire method of pumping my body full of adrenaline. More on that later. Once we escape the warship, we've got our hands on the infobot for Blackwater City on planet Rilgar. The residents of this planet are also dealing with their own infestation of alien creatures. They're also hosting the hoverboard races, so obviously we have to go and check it out. The super dramatic track that plays in this level helps illustrate the dire circumstances regarding the infestation of the amoeboids. There's this all-out war going on between the amoeboids and the extermabots, and we're getting caught in the crossfire. The alien infestation is real unsettling and appears to be a recurring event in multiple levels across the series. They're real big fans of having aliens attack, and I'm all for it. As creepy as the amoeboids can be, my attention is drawn to the waters near Blackwater City. In the water, you can see the dorsal fins of the alien fish that patrol the area. Step into that water and this happens. Yeah. Yet another waterbound enemy to keep me up at night. Add it to the pile. In my video on the Jak and Daxter series, I spent some time talking about the Lurker Shark, an enemy similar to the sharks that appear in Ratchet and Clank. A few commenters on the Jak and Daxter video thought it was strange how I didn't bring up the sharks from Ratchet and Clank, and the reason I didn't bring them up is because I have a dark secret that I need to share with you all. You see, I didn't grow up playing Ratchet and Clank. Well, not the original trilogy anyways. When I was a kid, I had this friend who owned the games, and whenever I would go to his place, I'd just watch him play. Whenever I asked to play the games for myself, he'd always just say no. So I just sat there and begrudgingly watched him play these games that I thought were super cool. He also did this with Ty the Tasmanian Tiger, and it pissed me off beyond belief. Flash forward years later when I got better friends and a PS3. I finally got my hands on Ratchet and Clank Future Tools of Destruction. I loved this game so much, but I hardly remember like any of it. I literally haven't played it since like 2010. And all I really remember about it was that it ended on a cliffhanger, and that really irked me. But I would love to go back to it someday. So this video not only serves as a look back on all the creepy things the original trilogy had to offer, but it also serves as an act of redemption. After all these years of ignoring one of PlayStation's original Golden Boys, I'm finally giving them the spotlight they deserve. Albeit like 20 years later.
That is simply unconscionable.
And since this is my first time playing through all three games, please be nice about the gameplay. If I do something super embarrassing in the B-roll, just ignore it. Back to Blackwater City, the pool sharks differ from other waterbound foes in a couple of ways. Firstly, they don't do anything to announce that they're about to attack. No growling noises and no spooky music. Secondly, you can actually fight back against them. By using the hydro displacer in certain areas, you can safely venture into empty pools and eliminate the sharks. It's really satisfying to take them out too. Very cathartic. I only wished I could have done this to the Lurker Shark as a kid. And lastly, the pool sharks are present in all three games. Sometimes their color changes, but they all function exactly the same. Some might think that the pool sharks are less frightening because they aren't accompanied by scary noises or music, but I'd beg to differ. Sometimes the sharks will take a few moments before eating you, and sometimes they'll eat you the second you touch that water. Since I could never gauge when I would die, I'd be thrown into a panic anytime my foot so much as grazed the water. Speaking of water, there are several flooded areas in the sewers below the city. In one area, you need to make your way through this long passage before it completely floods. The water is constantly rushing in, and you need to book it to avoid drowning. Earlier, I had mentioned my old fear of timers, and that fear originated with water levels. When I was a kid, I had a hand-me-down Sega Genesis with a copy of Sonic 2. I loved that game, but I never got past Chemical Plant Zone because of the underwater sections. Right before Sonic is about to drown, you'll see a timer slowly tick down. While this is happening, the infamous drowning theme grows faster and faster, and before you know it, game over. This moment petrified me and made me fear both the water and any type of timer. That fear of water only grew stronger and stronger after dealing with creatures like the lurker shark. Thanks for that. I have no doubt that if I had played Ratchet and Clank as a kid, I would have never gotten past Blackwater City. The underwater section here isn't even all that bad. I got it on like my 3rd or 4th try, and I didn't even freak out at all. Not even a little bit. Once we've got what we came for, we can leave Blackwater City and continue our journey across the galaxy. There are a bunch of different planets that bear a spooky atmosphere. Planet Core 2, the Gemlik base, and the Planet Velden revisit all had me feeling a little on edge. But there's one planet that really stood out to me with its dreadful vibes. The sky is full of bright green clouds that leak down into a light fog. The air is so toxic that most organic beings can't even survive without some type of oxygen mask. The source of this contamination is in plain sight. Nearby Blarg factories are spewing out black smoke into the atmosphere. Never-ending pollution is ultimately what brought about the downfall of this planet, making it entirely uninhabitable. This planet ties directly to this game's antagonist, Alonzo Drek. His big evil plan is pretty grim, so I wanted to take some time to highlight the story here. Story goes that Chairman Drek is constructing a new planet after his home planet of Orxon became heavily polluted and overpopulated. He plans on using a device to extract huge chunks of planets to sort of Frankenstein his own perfect planet. We even see Drek target planets Novalis and Eudora for their resources. Horrifyingly, his efforts are successful as the infobot for Orxon reveals that Drek's plans are in full motion. In this video, his synthetic planet appears right behind him in this incomplete state. The infobot for Drek's fleet shows his synthetic world is all prepped and ready to go. The only thing standing in his way now is planet Velden, Ratchet's home planet. Drek is set on using the deplanetizer to completely destroy Velden. This leads to our final showdown against Drek. During this fight, Drek reveals that he intentionally polluted and destroyed his own planet. This was never about finding a new home for his people. He was 100% driven by all the money he'd make from his schemes. Now, despite how bleak this all sounds, the story is presented in a comedic and fun way. Drek is one of those villains you see as a kid and you laugh at how comically evil they are. Then you grow up and you realize that Drek wasn't just some cartoony, over-the-top depiction of an evil executive. Executives are just like that. In Season 2, Episode 2 of Dev's Play, Tim Schafer plays Ratchet and Clank with Ted Price, founder of Insomniac Games. Once they get to Drek's introduction, Price explains what inspired Drek's character.
Who's he based on? Is it based on someone at a publisher?
You gotta remember, we were working on the lot at Universal. And so we were surrounded, Universal Studios, so we were surrounded by people that we assumed were movie executives and with the slick back hair and the sort of smarmy attitude. I never met any of them, but I just assumed they were somewhere in those big buildings that were a few hundred yards away. Yeah. So those people we never met were the inspiration for Drek.
It's just really funny to me that Drek wasn't even inspired by someone the team directly interacted with. It was just their idea of what these big, hotshot movie executives were probably like. Back to planet Orxon, this place is dreadful to explore. Not only is the narrative surrounding this place terrifying, but the planet itself just feels so glum and dreary. On your first visit to the planet, Ratchet can't even leave the ship thanks to the toxic air, so you're forced to play as Clank. Now, whenever I'm forced to play as a different character in any game, I'm typically stoked about the new perspective. Like when we first got to play as Clank at the BTS. We used him to explore the ship's exterior, and when I saw this opportunity to play as Clank, I was really excited. I just thought it was super cool. I love having multiple playable characters in any game, yet when I had to play as Clank here, I only felt dread. There was this level of comfort that came with knowing that playing as Clank on the BTS was something I chose to do. When you arrive on Orxon and you're forced to play as Clank, it feels nerve-wracking. The issue here is that Clank can't use any weapons. All he's got is a basic punch and his helipack. So when you're dropped off into a new and spooky looking planet, it's hard not to feel a little helpless, especially since the aliens on this planet are really difficult to deal with, even when you're playing as Ratchet. Sometimes games like doing this thing where they take away the tools that you're used to in order to create some level of difficulty. I talk about this during my video on the Sly Cooper series, so go check that out if you haven't already. But to summarize, I bring up how playing as Bentley made certain sections of the game feel more tense and scary. You really needed to adjust to Bentley's moveset and make the most out of his tools. Clank is similar in the sense that he's weaker than Ratchet and isn't armed like a tank, but it doesn't feel like you're playing the same game just as a weaker character when you're playing as Clank. Clank's sections feel more like a puzzle game. See, Clank's got his own tools of destruction in the form of various gadgets scattered around Orxon. We can command these guys to help us solve puzzles or attack any nearby threats. They're real handy for taking out the aliens too powerful for Clank to handle on his own. Thanks to the Gadgetbots, I felt pretty confident in these levels. I did feel the pressure that came with not being able to use any weapons, but I really liked having the Gadgetbots around. It's a fun development. You go from being scared of everything on Orxon to having the Gadgetbots steamrolling anything in your path. Then if a Gadgetbot dies, they just respawn at the location where you originally found them, so there really is no need to fear once you've got some bots. These sections reminded me a lot of Pikmin at times, and sometimes I feel like Pikmin can be a bit terrifying. Is that crazy to say? I was scared of everything when I was a kid. I don't know what was wrong with me. One thing that I really enjoy about Ratchet and Clank is that you really feel the other character's absence when the duo are separated. Later on planet Ultanis, Clank can't leave the ship because of the giant thunderstorms, so now you have to make do without Clank. And it's a really difficult adjustment since Clank helps Ratchet pull off so many of his different movement options. You can no longer high jump, long jump, or glide. It's awful not having Clank around, and it's cool to see this feeling goes both ways. The duo are at their strongest when they're together, and I love that. I also loved watching their relationship develop further in the next game, Ratchet and Clank Going Commando, which we'll go over next. The track that plays here is foreboding and epic. It pairs well with the dramatic environment. As you battle your way through a stormy swamp, it feels like you're playing through an action film, especially when you hear those cries for help and you gracefully swoop in to save the day. God, the aliens here are so horrifying, I love it. They're like mutant snail creatures. They have these giant tentacles poking out from their shells, and each one is tipped off with a giant crab claw. They also leave behind a murky trail of slime as they lurch around. One of their most prominent features is the bright red-orange eye they have on the top of these stalks. Sometimes they use this thing to survey the land while their bodies sit below the swamp water. It's really unsettling when you catch them doing this. Most times I didn't even realize that what I was looking at was an eye. I just thought it was more of the planet's weird plant life. Then, before you know it, these mutant snails are pouncing out of the water to attack. Very cool enemies. You even battle a swamp monster here exhibiting this same behavior. This one hides beneath the surface, watching you with its single eye and swiping at you with its tentacles. As someone who grew up afraid of underwater monsters, I know this fight would have petrified me as a kid. Yet this fight is nothing compared to what's hiding inside of the Megacorp outlet. The outlet itself is the main attraction of Oozla, and it's pretty strange. The store is full of aliens and overrun with plant life. As you explore, you can hear a chirpy tune playing on the store speakers, a song that played as shoppers perused the outlet. Having this upbeat tune playing in such a decrepit place feels equal parts haunting and hilarious. Because on one hand, you've got this really upbeat song playing in a creepy looking place, and on the other, it's just really funny to have this song playing while you're tearing aliens apart. Anyways, there's a path here that you can follow with the gravity boots. Slide down this tube and you'll land right into the lair of the beast. It appears to be another swamp monster, potentially related to the one that we fought outside of the outlet. Both monsters have tentacles covered with spikes and a long neck topped off with a single eye. The main difference here is that this monster isn't hiding beneath the swamp water. Instead, we can see the beast and its giant maw full of razor-sharp teeth. They've also got these giant crab claws, which makes them pretty similar to the snail aliens. Either way, this thing is terrifying. You have to constantly run away while also hitting the monster with everything you've got. That strafe will be your best bud during this fight, as it allows you to safely hop from lily pad to lily pad while you keep your distance. If that thing gets too close to you, it'll swipe at you with those tentacles. If you're too far, it'll lob a gigantic acidic blob your way. Occasionally during this fight, the monster will pick up the pace and charge towards you. Fail to outrun the creature and it will swallow Ratchet. This thing can also cover distance by diving underneath the water and using its eye to navigate. It's just like what the snail aliens do. The battle isn't all too hard, but I can see it being something that may have scared younger players, especially since this boss is entirely optional and stumbling upon them is pretty easy. Love me some weird, unsettling optional bosses. Speaking of fearsome enemies, there were some aliens that I found to be particularly unsettling on planets Tabora and Grelbin. On Tabora, you can find this mystic guy offering to fix Ratchet and Clank's ship in exchange for a few crystals. You can find these crystals by venturing off into the nearby desert. Later on planet Grelbin, you can find this same guy looking for more crystals. On this planet, you find the crystals inside of these giant snowfields. Whether it's Tabora or Grelbin, hunting for crystals is not an easy task. Off in the fields, you'll encounter swarms of aliens. They're tough too. You're screwed out here if you're not topped off on ammo. Occasionally, you'll run into bigger aliens near some of the crystals. On Tabora, you'll find these weird piles of rubble. Get close and this giant alien will explode into the air. These guys fly after you and shoot electric beams from their eye. They definitely had me jump a little bit when I first encountered them. Plus, they remind me a lot of the cacodemons from Doom. Over on Grelbin, you'll find that the snowfields are exactly the same, though I feel like the small fry here are way stronger than the smaller aliens on Tabora. Like, seriously, these little yetis were tearing me to shreds. Sometimes in the field you can find these pieces of cracked ice. Get close and you'll find a unique foe. I was playing this portion of the game at like midnight, and when this thing came out of the ice, I was scared shitless. These giant serpents are nothing like any other enemy I've seen from this series so far. They feel like they don't even belong here. They genuinely shocked me. To make matters worse, they attack with this gigantic laser beam that hits you like a truck. This is jumping ahead a bit, but a similar enemy appears in the third game, Up Your Arsenal. On the first planet you explore, Florana, you can find another serpent-type enemy in the water. This one really caught me by surprise. I didn't think they'd throw a giant enemy like this at you in the very first level. These guys are horrible. I love them. I want more of these types of aliens in future installments. Did you notice that both of these serpent guys are technically water enemies? It all circles back to the lurker shark, doesn't it? I've gotta say, the dragons and the yetis made Grelbin hell to explore. I didn't even bother fighting anything, I just got what I needed and I moved on to the next planet. The reason why Ratchet and Clank are on another galactic adventure differs a lot from the previous game. Interestingly though, the plot of this game has a few creepy elements. This time around, the duo are tasked with retrieving a top-secret biological experiment. To make a long story very short, this experiment is known as a protopet, and it was developed by Megacorp's top researchers. The Megacorp company was developing these guys to become the perfect companion. However, a report from one of Megacorp's top researchers, Dr. Fullbladder, revealed that the protopets possess high levels of a chemical known as monster propanase. This chemical causes them to grow in size and become extremely hostile. We can witness the vicious nature of the protopet firsthand in the trailer advertising them.
Why is Billy sad? Is he cold, hungry, or maybe just...
Oh no, take it away!
lonely? Introducing the Megacorp Protopet. Your child will shriek with joy when he meets our adorable friend. Wanna play ball? So does the Protopet. Need a partner for tag? Go find the Protopet. Up for some cops and robbers?
Help! Police!
So is you-know-who. Just ask Billy. The Megacorp Protopet. Stop by Planet Bolden and get yours free from Abercrombie Fizzwidget himself.
If it wasn't already extremely obvious, the protopets are more or less a parody of gremlins. In fact, the description for the protopet in the Art of Ratchet and Clank book confirms that the protopet was inspired by, quote, 80s creature flicks. So think gremlins, critters, ghoulies, and everything in between. Later in Algon City, we get to see the protopets unleashed. The city is a complete mess. This level is packed full of the little guys causing havoc and attacking the robot citizens. It's honestly really impressive to see so many enemies on screen at once. I didn't even know the PS2 could do something like that. In episode 30 of the Ratchet and Clank dev commentary, developers Mike Stout and Tony Garcia talk about the design of the protopet. Stout explains that one of the challenges that came with creating the protopet was trying to fit a ton of them on screen at once. This resulted in the protopets having a pretty simplistic design. They only have 2 feet and their skeleton isn't all that complicated, which allows for a ton of them to be on screen without killing the PS2. Stout mentions that this was necessary to help Algon City feel like it's been truly overrun. And I think that this choice really paid off as the city feels like utter chaos. Protopets are all over the place, exterminabots are rushing onto the scene, and we're caught up in the mosh pit. While the protopets come off as horrifying in the cutscenes they appear in, they're not really hard to dispose of. If anything, I love this level so much because it feels so satisfying to blow up hordes of protopets. There's just something so gratifying about tossing a mini nuke into a crowd and watching them all go flying. Is that morbid? Sorry. You know, the protopets remind me a lot of an alien creature that appeared in an episode of Jimmy Neutron of all things. In Attack of the Twonkies, Jimmy basically discovers an alien that makes the perfect pet for Carl. This alien, which Carl names Twonkies, look pretty damn similar to the protopet. To strengthen the connection even further, the Twonkies end up going crazy and attacking Retroville. I know that similarities are bound to pop up since both pieces of media are Gremlins parodies, but come on, just look at their designs. Both creatures have a spherical body, 2 feet, and a little antenna topped off with a ball. I even found a forum post made on ratchetgalaxy.com by someone who made this same connection. The post reads, "Has anyone noticed that the Protopets in GC look just like the Twonkies from the Jimmy Neutron Attack of the Twonkies episode? Those of you who already know what the Twonkies look like should see the comparison." And to add a little fuel to the fire, Darla Gratch mentions that the creatures are non-allergenic. This is a quality that the Twonkies share as well. In the Jimmy Neutron episode, Carl has such a difficult time finding a pet that doesn't set off his allergies, yet the Twonkies are the only thing that don't affect him. Interesting. This is probably just a string of coincidences, but my personal low-stakes conspiracy theory is that the Twonkies are inspired by the Protopets. Ratchet and Clank Going Commando released in North America on November 11th, 2003, while Attack of the Twonkies aired on the same day just 1 year later in 2004. How peculiar. Again, it's probably just a coincidence, but I like to think that someone on the Jimmy Neutron team just really loved Ratchet and Clank. Back to Going Commando, we soon discover that Protopet production can be brought to an end by using the Helixomorph on the original Protopet. The commercial for the Protopets reveals that all Protopets are produced from an original copy. In the commercial, we can see that the Protopets are branded and essentially tortured so that they can become loving pets. It definitely makes sense why they would become aggressive. I mean, I'm kind of rooting for them at this point. Over on planet Yeedle, we take a visit to the Protopet factory. Captain Quark uses the Helixomorph on the original Protopet, but it ends up mutating the little guy into a giant. Their appearance is now more in line with the Krites from Critters. The battle against this thing isn't really all that scary. The giant Protopet has some weird attacks, like rolling into a ball and spitting out projectiles. They can also summon smaller Protopets, which sounds like it would make the fight overwhelming, but the giant Protopet sort of just sits back when you're dealing with the small fry. From my experience, this was the easiest final boss in the trilogy. I still liked it a lot, but oh man, Drek and Nefarious. God, those fights were nuts. Speaking of Nefarious, let's move on to the next game, Ratchet and Clank Up Your Arsenal. I don't really have too much to say about this game in particular. The main thing I wanted to discuss was this game's antagonist, Dr. Nefarious. I just think he's delightfully wicked and has a pretty dark plan, so I wanted to give it some time in the spotlight. Essentially, Nefarious plans on using his bio-obliterator to destroy all organic life. This device takes an organic being and transforms them into a robot. Nefarious claims that he is motivated by achieving equality and liberty for all robotic citizens, and I think that's a really cool motivation. Though, for someone claiming that robots shouldn't be forced to obey, I thought it was really strange that he had his own robot butler. Nefarious also has his own army of robots that attempt to stop Ratchet and Clank. It's something that bugged me throughout my entire playthrough. Turns out that this hypocrisy was a subtle hint towards Nefarious's past. By playing through the Quark vid comics, we get to learn about Quark's history with Nefarious. Turns out that Nefarious used to be an organic being. Not sure what his alien race was though. He attended high school with Quark, who used to bully him relentlessly. This experience led to Nefarious becoming a powerful supervillain. When Quark went to stop one of Nefarious's schemes, he ended up knocking Nefarious into a pit full of machinery. This pit ended up transforming Nefarious into a robot. This moment explains his hypocrisy and his performative activism for robots. He might be a robot in his physical form, but ultimately he's a squishy at heart. It's also just horrible what happens to him. Like, what did that machinery do to Nefarious to turn him into a robot? Did it rip the skin from his body? What about his internal organs? Were they just replaced with cogs and gears? What did that feel like? How is he alive? Can we all just take a second here and agree that Captain Quark is the real villain? We should have just let Nefarious hash it out against Quark, honestly. Again, I haven't played every Ratchet and Clank game, but I really do hope at some point Nefarious gets his revenge. I mean, he deserves it. I have one thing in my notes here that I wanted to mention. It's not scary, it just shocked me. I don't know if I want to say this, so I'm just going to show you the text from my notes.
I thought we agreed to put that jungle business behind us. It was mating season. How could I have known she was your sister?
So, yeah. That's something. That was about all the spooky and horrific things I could dig up in the first 3 games in the Ratchet and Clank series. Please let me know if there was anything I didn't mention that you felt should have been included. Horror is pretty subjective, and there were a ton of different planets that I felt had a pretty serious tone that caught me off guard at times. I was also just taken back by the sheer number of planets in these games. Like, damn, the devs for these games were nuts. Also, feel free to let me know if you want to see a follow-up to this video in the future. I've heard that the other games in this series step into more mature territory, especially Ratchet Deadlocked, and I would love to check them out sometime. I wanted to look into the remake and the movie, but I've heard that they aren't very good, unfortunately.
Seen the movie?
What's that?
Seen the movie?
Yes, yes.
This was a really fun video to work on because, like I said before, I really wanted to sit down and play the original trilogy after all these years. If you want my opinion on these games from like a gameplay standpoint, I think they're all fantastic. I feel like each entry just got better and better with more refined gameplay, and honestly, it's amazing. For that reason, I'd say that Up Your Arsenal is probably my favorite of the first 3 games. I had like this Ratatouille moment while playing this game, and I just remembered what it was like to play Tools of Destruction for the first time. It's amazing. I just love tearing through hordes of enemies with these big goofy weapons. Let me know if there are any other non-horror games you can think of with their own spooky elements, and we may end up discussing them on another episode of Occult in the Ordinary. Once again, thank you all so much for the support. It really means a lot to me. Anyways, that's all I have for you. Take care.